Sometimes there's this sense of disbelief. This sense of how is the illusion possible? Before this happening that really never happened, it may have seemed like a sick joke. Except maybe it didn't even seem like a joke, it just seemed sick. I mean, there's a remembering that at times when the me energy is here, the suffering can be immense. And it is difficult to tell apparent other people who aren't really there, who are just appearing as this miraculous form that we call a human body. Sometimes it can be difficult to say that that suffering, that pain that's felt, is perfection. That's it. That's home. The resistance that is felt on top of the pain, that's it. That's home. That's just what's happening. And the difficulty is just arising from nowhere, from nothing. And it doesn't even feel that difficult. It's just that there's a memory of how much this apparent person had suffered and how, in a way, horrific it can feel, and how ingrained certain stories can feel. But that's this. That's home. That's freedom. This liberation looks like anything and everything. There's a sense that looking at this as a joke is not so helpful when the me is there. When the me is there, it can misinterpret the saying that this is a cosmic joke as, well, then what's the point? Might as well fuck around. And if that kind of reaction is happening, then that's just what's happening. That is also this. That's this boundless freedom appearing as this apparent bound contraction that is illusory. Not that it's illusory, there is an actual contraction, apparently, appearing from nowhere, nothing. And that contraction can create this belief in the misinterpretation that since this is all a cosmic joke, what's the point? And again, if that's how it's interpreted, that's just what's happening. But to clarify, that's not what's really being said. What's really being said is that there's there's no one here, there's no one there who could ever get enlightened, who could ever wake up, who could ever be liberated. Because the bondage is an illusion. The bondage isn't real. What actually ends up happening is for some unknown, reasonless reason, the contraction can drop, dissipate, disappear. And then what's seen by no one is that there was only freedom. There was just unconditional love. This nothingness, this emptiness that is everything simultaneously can be called unconditional love. This isn't this isn't a state, an emotion, a feeling, an experience that the person can mimic. I mean, it can try, and that's also just what's happening. It's also just this. But that's not what's being said. What's being pointed to is that everything is unconditional love. The chaos is unconditional love. The desperation, the pain, the sadness, the suffering. And this can oftentimes feel really unacceptable for the me. And oftentimes it is because the sense of me is the sense of no, not this. There's something missing. There's something wrong. Something needs to change. But that's this unconditional love appearing as that. It can fight, it can struggle, it can try to get away from itself, it can try to stop the suffering, it can try to stop the pain. And that's also just what's happening. In a way, it's so natural for that resistance to be there. What seems to be an apparent difference is that resistance still arises, but the resistance isn't resisted. It's also just what is. Because it's normal for preferences to be there, to want to feel good, to want to feel happy and at peace. And so when a lot of pain is there, or a lot of suffering, a lot of so called negative emotions, then resistance is there. And that's completely natural. Perhaps what could make it seemingly worse, which is also just what's happening, is that because of certain spiritual beliefs, you believe that you shouldn't be feeling angry. You shouldn't be feeling sad. You should be feeling grateful. You should be happy. You should be at peace. You should be understanding. You shouldn't judge. You shouldn't compare. You should love yourself. You should love others. You should forgive. And these are all beautiful concepts. Apparently, it helped this person apparently heal in certain ways, feeling like it was getting somewhere. It was becoming a better human being. It was becoming more enough, more acceptable, more lovable, more spiritual. What's being suggested is that it could also be a burden, and there's nothing wrong or right with it. This is just an attempt to describe what could be going on. It could become a burden, and this message isn't for the person. This isn't for the me to mimic unconditional love. This isn't about acceptance. This isn't about allowing. This is this is pointing to this is saying that there's no one here, there's no one there who has the free will to allow, to accept, to be unconditionally loving. That whole thing is an illusion. A miraculous one, a beautiful one. Maybe annoying. This isn't telling you to be unconditionally loving. No one can be unconditionally loving. In fact, the me is inherently In a sense, it's inherently insecure. It inherently doesn't feel good enough. It inherently feels like something is missing. I'm not saying that this illusory sense of me can't seemingly attempt to love itself more. Great, why not? It can attempt to love others more. That's beautiful. But what's being said here is that there's no one there doing that. That's all just happening. That's all just conditioning and programming. That's something that you heard from a spiritual teacher or a book or a friend or your parents or church. There's nothing wrong with the me attempting to love itself, attempting to feel whole, attempting to feel good enough. That is already freedom, this boundless freedom appearing bound, appearing as a bound me who is seeking for wholeness, seeking for validation, seeking for security. How is that possible? In a sense, how could there be anything wrong or right with you if there is no you? What are good traits and bad traits? In a sense, it seems as if the character here, a parent character that's appearing from nothing, that is nothing, appearing as what we call a character simultaneously. It seems like it's not that there's no judgment, it's that there's no one here owning any of the traits, any of the seeming good and bad, any of the flaws, any of the conditioning. It's just what it is. And it seems as if when the me isn't here, none of that is really energized. None of that is given power to, because what would give power to it? It's just what it is. It's just what's happening. So this is not saying don't judge. Judgments are just thoughts. Beliefs are just thoughts. Values are just thoughts. Opinions are just thoughts. There's nothing wrong with thoughts. This here can have a storm of thoughts. It just doesn't belong to anyone. It's coming from nothing. It is nothing. It has relative meaning, but it's utterly empty. This cosmic joke is hard to swallow. And it's not meant to be swallowed. It's just what it is. And that can't be digested by the me. The me will not truly understand the mystery and unknowableness of this cosmic joke. It will most likely misinterpret it as perhaps a sick joke. And it might react. And that's also just what's happening. How is this possible? Everything that's being seen by those apparent things we call eyes, everything is nothing, appearing as a screen, what we call a screen. No one is behind the eyes. There is no entity. There is no one here who's looking. There's just looking. There's no position. There's no point from which the looking is even taking place. It's just what's happening, and there's no separation between this thing we call an eye, whatever's behind the eye, whatever's in front of the eye. There's no separation. Totally edgeless. No bounds.